Greetings, everyone. Welcome to our exclusive Global Leading Voices webinar campaign. We are delighted to have you join us here today. Please be informed that if you have any questions during the presentation, you may type them into the question box in your control panel. The presenter will answer your questions at the end of the presentation accordingly. Now, without further ado, we will turn the time over to our presenter, who will begin shortly.
Thanks very much. I appreciate the opportunity. I'm going to speak rather openly on a lot of terms. We're kind of in the middle of a lot of things when it comes to cyber defense, by the way. That's the business that I'm in. We're going to talk about cyber offense. We're going to talk about just, how big this is and how much bigger it's getting. There's truly some shocking numbers that you'll be seeing here. Wrote an article about this probably 3-4 years ago that I'll refer to. It's amazing when you write articles that you look back at them and you say, wow, I wasn't talking about trillions back then. I was talking about billions. So, and that's only 3 years ago. So you're going to see some things here that are really happening. I do use some shocking numbers. Let's not go crazy with the numbers so much as look, the reality is we're playing catch up when it comes to cyber defense. Also, so this is my bias. I'm a director of a not-for-profit think tank called ProjectSafety.org. And what we do is we basically look at proof of concept things. So they're saying, hey, what's out there that, kind of can help along here in the cyber defense because the offense is kind of winning and we got to play a little catch-up. So my bias is in the technology side of solutions and getting cyber defense solutions out there. I'm a big promoter of training, and there's very simple reasons, and I'll discuss those as we go along the presentation. It's your employees first, and that's what we all need to remember. So with that, let me just kind of move along here, and we'll cover some of these subject areas. And really, I look forward to the Q&A. That's kind of where I'm best. So let's move on. By the way, here's some of the links, and this will be sent to you, I assume, later on. So there's links to some of these studies, and I want you to have those. They really go in depth. They show you how they get some of these numbers. And when you start looking at how they get the numbers, you'll start seeing that this the cyber risk is much higher than we really thought in the past. I'm going to give you a reference later on, the World Economic Forum. As you can see there, it says cyber attacks are top 3 risks to societal alongside of natural disaster. Okay, I'm calling from Florida. We have a hurricane coming. Fortunately, not in Florida. It's a little north, but it's a big one. And time and time again, when I talked about hacking, when I've talked about cyber offense, when I've talked about cyber defense in conventions, I said, look, I'm going to simplify this for you. I live in Florida. If you want to know what it's like to have all the power out, to have where you live turned into a third world country immediately, come to Florida after a hurricane, and you will see what hacking can do to critical infrastructure. Because in reality, it's the same. And here's the Global Risk Report 2018, basically making that statement. And it's saying, look, yeah, right under the biggest natural disasters we can think of, the next on the list is cyber attacks. Okay, that's where we're at. Look at the numbers in the middle. And by the way, I gave you some of these numbers because you got to sell your boss. I mean, it's tough out there when people are saying, I need a budget. I need to be able to, have some money here to do some things. And to do that, you're going to have to sell your boss. Well, here's the big picture. And we're going to get down to the reality of, people here on a daily basis. But here's a huge number, $6 trillion by 2021. And by the way, I just got an article from Forbes magazine. Forbes magazine says, you know what? It looks like we're going to reach that. At first everybody was foo-fooing these numbers, saying, yeah, no, that's crazy. That's just way too much money. But now all of a sudden we're finding that it's pretty much on track. That's the type of numbers we're talking about. We're talking about, gross national product of countries. So this is a significant number. Excuse me. Okay, you can see the graph here. And in that graph, there's every global risk that there is. We all talk about, are concerned about, and rightfully so, terrorism. Terrorism is underneath the risk of hacking, of cyber offense. That's how big this is. So we're now in a societal situation where I was one of the first people to use the term cyber war in some of my articles. And I got slammed for doing that. And people saying, no, you can't call this war there. You have to have a declaration of war. And, all the legal beagles and countries and that kind of stuff got in the middle of it. And my comment was, if it's that big, if it can do that much, then what do you want to call it? So now we have people changing their mind, using that terminology. And here we are in a global study saying, yeah, it's up there, right? There's no doubt about it. So these are some of the things that I want to give you so that you can present to your people the seriousness of the nature of this. We really have to start moving forward on cyber defense. How dangerous, and these are the money guys saying that. This is the IBM saying that. And we compare it to nuclear weapons. Interestingly enough, I spoke at Oak Ridge National Laboratory, and for those who may not know the history, that's the home of the Manhattan Project, which was all the secrets of the atomic bomb many years ago. Interesting philosophy over there that there's a lot of people thinking maybe that's the same thing we should do with cyber defense and cybersecurity, is we need a public-private shut up kind of a mode and some people with oversight watching that. But that's, at the time, this is 3-4 years ago that I spoke, the danger was looked at as saying, yeah, this is equivalent. I mean, if you can control a power grid, you can control just about anything. And this is the concern, that we're really talking about a tremendous, tremendous threat. And from the CEO of IBM to Warren Buffett, I mean, everybody's understanding it. Again, I'm giving you these high views just so that this is serious and everybody is now looking at it. This is an interesting article that I wrote, second article that I wrote for Government Technology Magazine. And by the way, that magazine looks at local and state government. And the reason I wrote for them is I worked for a group underneath them called Digital Communities, and they were talking about smart cities. And if you know anything about critical infrastructure, the rubber meets the road locally. This isn't some big, federal or national thing. When you are running a power grid, when you're running water, when you're doing these type of things, that's all from a local basis. So that's why I decided years ago to write for them. And glad I have for all these years. And you can see that date of that article is 2010. The guy on the right you might recognize, it's Vince Cerf. He's called the father of the internet. And he made a very interesting comment. Early on in discussions, I said, well, look, we're using the internet for things like critical infrastructure. And he was one of the very first people to jump out of the gate and say, whoa, 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 whoa. That was never meant for internet connectivity. We shouldn't be doing that. And he makes an interesting point that you're going to see later on in the discussion here, that early on, they weren't thinking when they created the internet. The internet was created basically for a survivable network. It's worked pretty good, by the way. And I come from a communications background. But that was the intent. Authentication and security were not really in the minds of people when they first started that. So, here we are this far back, the convenience of the internet is just so appetizing, we can't help ourselves use it for things we shouldn't use it for. But clearly, there are things it shouldn't be used for. And the difficulty is not really even security, it's authentication. Is a person touching that? Is the machine touching that? We're in a world that we can't even see what we're doing anymore. We've connected so many things. So again, early on, here's the person that, you know, created the internet saying, there's some things we shouldn't be using it for. So there's ISO standards. I have my CISM and my CISSP, and I like taking those courses. And by the way, I'm telling you, you should. The part I liked about it was it makes you look at an organization. And I'm to the belief that cybersecurity is not a cost, it's actually a revenue center. Because I've been in companies and I've said, okay, what do we have here? And as you're looking at cybersecurity, guess what? You're finding redundancy. You're finding the things that shouldn't have occurred. You're finding ways of running much more efficiently. All those things are already there. So if you are degreed or you have a background in cybersecurity, you're actually going in and helping companies from a profit center standpoint. And you shouldn't underestimate them. Now, risks are risks. And that's one of the things, by the way, I liked about the courses that I took, is that it took a look at risk management. It didn't look at it from a technical standpoint. It said, look, you're going to be talking to a CEO. The CEO wants to know money. They want to know what the cost is of not only investing into cyber defense technologies, but also what is the loss. That's the way they think. And again and again and again, it was repeated, talk to the CEO level. If you're talking to the CTO, guess what? It's probably the wrong person to talk to, because they have a different thinking than the CEO. You really got to get to that level of management that says, hey, this is my company. This is my intellectual property. These are my stockholders. Because cybersecurity is really just that important. And assessing the danger in it is very important too, and there's one of the standards that does that. And the review of how all this information is gathered. Again, I brought up the $6 trillion dollar amount. I write articles, okay? So when you write articles, you know, you got to use a little hype. You know, I'm sorry that, you know, it's that headline, right? You got to catch some eye. And I immediately, when I saw this, and I reviewed the report, I said, yeah, maybe 3 trillion, maybe $1 trillion, but not 6. Unfortunately, like I said, even Forbes is saying at this point, it looks like we're on track. So the numbers that we're talking about are just astronomical. Okay, so what do we do when we start looking at cyber risks? I like this graph, because you're doing things internally and there's consequences externally. A lot of people don't quite realize that. And I also might add at this point, this is a statistic that I discussed again and again. The largest amount of breach in any company comes internally from your own employees by mistake. Okay, let me kind of, you know, repeat that again. Internally by your employees by mistake. And that's really not their fault, that's your fault, because you're not training them into security. Too often we just automated, and we gave them all these tools, and we never really said, you know, you got to think about security a little bit. So there are tremendous internal costs to this. The results externally, you know, your customers, business disruption. Well, I'm going to show you some numbers here that will kind of make some sense to you. Again, the CEO, the person that you're selling on this, but the amount of revenue loss. So those numbers are coming out now, and people are realizing. You know, now there's a lot of examples I can use, but in the majority of the examples that I've used, they estimated just how bad it was, and unfortunately it took so long to fix that those numbers became greater. So the reality is there, the cost of it. Again, here's a disaster recovery plan, and how we first we have to take care of the problem, and then we have to address the security problem. I'm going to give you a statistic later on that I was shocked to see, but people are playing such catch up right now in cyber defense that they're not really even putting money in defense. They're putting money into, uh-oh, something happened and I got to fix it. So that's for the majority of money that's being spent right now in cyber defense. Now, that's not to say you don't have a disaster recovery plan. You know, frankly, there's the technologies just and people and you know, find people, by the way, to fix it. It's not easy. I would, you know, discuss that with your CEO too. Say, look, it's not only could we have a problem, but we don't even know if we can get somebody and employ somebody to fix it, because clearly there is a shortage. There's a massive shortage of people in this industry. You know, that's good news for some people that might be on this call. They're thinking about this as a career. You have some pretty good future in front of you from a career standpoint. But right now, today, it's kind of scary because, you know, again, we don't even have people there to fix it, and we are still reactionary versus proaction. We're still on a reactionary basis. I took out some money costs of this, and I just kept the days of different types of attacks. And I did that because, you know, you use these averages, you know, average business, but that doesn't mean anything to me if I'm a small business, and I'm a big business, or I'm a country. Those kind of numbers just don't make sense sometimes. But something that a CEO does understand is we're not going to be running for web-based attack 22 days. We're going to be disrupted. I mean, we can run, but we're going to definitely be disrupted. Look at malicious insiders, which, by the way, is one of the biggest attack vectors right now. 55 days, and that's crippling your business. Also, look at all the different attack methods and methodologies. Bootnets are one of the biggest things right now, and they horrify me because I'm in critical infrastructure looking at IoT, Internet of Things, and saying, wow, that's a bootnet. Oh, yes, it is. So there's other problems that are actually growing. There's a direction that we're going that I'm very concerned about into some of the technologies that we're using. And again, we need to secure to be able to actually move forward. By the way, again, underneath, you see the study that was done. All those figures are in there. There's a lot of facts and figures there. I didn't want to throw too many of them out. I just kind of like this one because people understand downtime. People understand that my business isn't going to be running for this period of time. So that's an important way to actually simplify calculations to a CEO level. Unfortunately, we got all these consulting firms and everybody in this business, and we get to 50-page reports on, well, here's all your issues, here's all your problems. It's going to cost you this much to even get to this point. And I'm afraid that we're kind of scaring a few people away, and we really don't want to do that. So, where are we spending our money? I was actually shocked to see this figure, and that's because, again, my bias is I'm in cyber defense. So, when you're thinking in cyber defense terms, you're always saying, oh, no, I have, we've got encryption in here. We're able to view the attacks here. Some of the technologies that I work with at a very high level, and again, very often proof of concept level, to say we can, we got this under control. That's not where the investment's going. That's not what people are spending money on. And I'll look at the very first figure in detection, okay? There's not a CEO that I've ever talked to that I said, okay, you have two choices. You can know who hacked you or not be hacked. Which one would you like? Okay, I'm sorry, there's not one person that ever said, oh, I want to know who hacked me. Okay, they don't want to be hacked. And that's something that, again, is dependent on myself and people I'm working with in playing catch up in cyber defense technologies, because right now this is showing what's going on in the real world. People are just putting band-aids on the bad situations that are occurring, and the majority of their money is not spent until something actually happens. That's a very dangerous position to be. So, here we are, real world. And by the way, this is important stuff. I mean, certainly, with the way things are today, have a recovery plan. That's something that's absolutely critical. Just make the assumption that you're going to get hacked. I think it's about 50-50 at this point. So, you might as well just make the assumption. And with that assumption, you have to be able to start working on not only detection, but recovery plans and investigation plans. But look at those numbers. It's just like we're just looking at what's happening. We're not really correcting it. Now, this is the one that drives me crazy. This is what keeps me awake at night. I'm in the critical infrastructure business. Okay, and because of that, when you're in a critical infrastructure business, you have like zero tolerance for hacking. I mean, you can't have anything because it's critical infrastructure. I mean, you're going to have just one little thing happen, and that happens like a daisy chain of another thing. I've worked with power grids, I've worked with gas and oil and gas, and a lot of other companies, hospitals. And we're just in a situation where, as much as we're trying to play catch up and secure what we have, we got two things happening that if we don't correct right now, where it's gonna really crush us. And that is cloud, and that's IoT. Now, look, I'm a promoter of both. I mean, what that can give to a business from an efficiency standpoint, an operability standpoint, even security. I mean, cloud can afford things that individual people can't afford. So I don't have issues with it. IoT, guess what? IoT is used in cyber defense. I mean, you got a sensor out there looking at something. Hey, something happened here. I want to be able to see it. So I need to be able to see it with something. I need something out there to be able to view it. So here you have IoT that's out there that's actually happening. But the big factor, it's shocking to me. Are you securing those technologies? I mean, it's absolute requirement. And the requirement, look at this again, look at the numbers. So how much is the cloud going to grow? Okay, shows today on premise, shows how much it's going to grow into cloud by 2020. It's almost 50-50. Okay, and there's different numbers out there, but if you look at it, it's kind of, so it's going to increase 50%. And I am watching security technologies, and I'm sorry, they ain't there yet in many situations of the cloud. Let me give you an idea how bizarre it is with IoT. IoT is scary because of just the volume, the numbers of IoTs out there, and you've probably seen the articles and these type of numbers, but there's billions of them that are projected. I mean, we're going to have personal like 100 IoTs per person in this world. It's a tremendous, tremendous amount. There's a problem with IoT, and I found this out in the early days of the smart grid. We start putting smart meters out there, and smart meters are great because when you get down to the industry aspect, they say, well, why are you putting them in there? And believe it or not, it was like, well, we're tired of our people getting dog bites because they have to go read a meter, manually and find out how much power you use, and and of course there's cost to that too. But it's just in legal action from dog bites and people walking in and trying to read your meter. So the efficiency was there, and the efficiency was just too great. Even when I went to one of the suppliers of a smart meter and said, you know what, got a security issue. And they did their risk analysis and said, well, yeah, but, we got dog bites. I said, well, okay, but you just got to understand, you're using something that you really, really got to think about, and you really, really got to secure it. Let me tell you how bad it is with IoT right now. And I'm really frustrated with it because, again, from proof of concept standpoint, I have ways that we can secure this. IoT has a very, very small processor, and that's one of the biggest problems. That even if you have a problem, you can't put a patch on it because there's not enough room in the processor to do that. Also, encryption. Encryption file sizes are becoming so great and are so great that you can't even encrypt an IoT. Now, there's some ways of doing that, and we really need to move on to some of these technologies. But that is a big, big, fat problem with IoT. It's out there. It's not encrypted. It's being used for DDoS attacks. Your denial of service. There is a huge problem with IoT. To give you an example, again, I work with power companies and the like, critical infrastructure. And I asked a person, well, why don't you just not use IoT? And the answer was, try to buy an electric motor that doesn't have an IoT in it. And there was dead silence, in the room, everybody looking at each other. IoTs are great. Hey, your bearing's wearing out. This is getting a little hot. Hey, this thing's going to break. Again, it's giving you tremendous, tremendous information. But we need to secure the IoT. We need to secure these processes. If not, we're going to there's going to be so many numbers out there. There's going to be so much stuff out there that we're going to lose control of all this. And I'm going to be talking about that a little bit later on too. Okay, retaliation. And I'm going to pick on the UK. I'm a U.S. citizen, so let's pick on our dear friends here in the UK. The UK is very concerned, as we are, about critical infrastructure, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to put this out there. To the point that they're saying, look, enough is enough. Yes, our financial institute, we've been hacked all these different ways. Now, if we get to the point of somebody attacking our critical infrastructure, that's crossing the line, and then we are going to hit back with cyber offense. By the way, again, technically, I'm not a big fan of cyber offense. Something needs to be done. Enough is enough. Literal number, 6 trillion. How long can you let something like that occur? Something's got to be done, and I understand that, but I'm not a politician. I'm a technician. And in the technical world, the problem we have is that as soon as you use that offensive technique, then you just threw code out there, and that person's going to reverse engineer it and throw it back at you. So we look at it as something that won't really work very long. And it's our belief that really the person who defends better is the one that just might win this. So we have concerns, and we have history on it already. We understand what happens. We understand the technical aspects of this. But we don't see cyber offense as being a long-term answer. Very well might be a short-term. Again, we got to stop the bleeding. I understand that. But we really have to start working on some long-term solutions. Where's our president? And he was looking at cyber attacks. And reversing one of the directives that was made in the Obama administration of saying we cannot use offense. I'm going to make a statement here, and maybe this will make a little sense. Again, I'm not an cyber offense promoter. In the early days of the Gulf War, afterwards, Colin Powell, who was a general there that that ran that war basically, made a statement. He said, if I had the ability in Iraq of turning the power off versus bombing it, and collateral damage and, human damage and death, versus, if I had the ability of hacking it and turning it off, I would have much preferred to do that, because I had to bring my troops in, and it's hot, it's in a desert, we got no power, we got to rebuild all this stuff. I mean, it's an absolute mess. So you got to understand that retaliatory aspect is there, and it's there politically. It's been done. I mean, this cyber war is a reality. I can point to things, but again, I don't want to get involved in the politics of it. I just want to get involved in the understanding of it. So we're just in this middle ground right now saying, we got to do something. Well, what are we going to do? And we're in a very tough situation right now. Please read those hyperlinks. Rebecca does an interesting balance in offense and defense, and kind of comes up with a solution as we do it, again, as technology people, that offense, it might be short term, but it's not the way to go long term. And we can prove that from a technical standpoint. That's just kind of the way we are. Now, I hate to, what I'm right here, I'm going to take a shot at Bruce Snyder. By the way, great person. This guy knows encryption probably better than anybody in the world. And on the early days of the internet, I was there when it first started. I followed the fiber optic companies prior to that. And there is an issue with public safety in the internet. There just is. And I don't want to get into specifics of mine, but I kind of walked the streets on the early days of the internet with the FBI. There were some things that were going on back then, and not only theft, but pornography and child pornography. The very beginning of the internet, which I didn't agree. That's there's a line. Hey, you're crossing the line. So I got to know these people a little bit, and I also got to know that their hands are tied in a lot of ways. They really can't do much if they can't see what's going on. I'm not promoting backdoors, technically. I'm sorry. I'm a technician. If you can put backdoors in encryption, I can find it. And there are a lot of other people that can too. That's just the technical reality of a backdoor. 3 years ago, the DARPA does something. It's called DARPA Challenge, and they did it at DEF CON. And what they did was kind of interesting. They said, okay, we're going to use AI to hack AI. Okay. And they actually did it. So we have now hackers using AI to be able to actually get into your systems, artificial intelligence. So you got software on software. That's the trouble with software. You can hack it. So the difficulty with backdoors right now, there is AI and there is computing power, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later on, that's able to see what's going on in encryption. So we have to be very careful with that. At the same time, we need to support our public safety people in their intel gathering, which is just a necessity of the world. I mean, it's just real world. And again, I've seen it from the street level, and I support it. I don't support it from a technology standpoint. You can even Bruce Snyder made a pretty good comment saying, "Look, guys, you're just making it easy for yourself and hard for the cyber defense people," and that's common. So it's true, and I understand it. Look, we can't have, the FBI can't have this massive technical group that they're going to pay for on a budget by budget basis. They need to be able to access and control information when they can. Here we are in this day and age again. We're in the middle of all that stuff. Okay, we understand. If you got to do it, you got to do it. But let's do it right. Let's not make a technology that basically can be broken. And that's, again, my job and the people that are in the cyber defense business, they're saying, okay, yeah, we understand, but don't do it that way. We're big people. We understand what can happen here. Okay, let's move on to stuff that I do. Prior to talking about new technology, though, I'm gonna bring up a couple of things that you really need to do immediately. I'm not promoting a training group. I'm just not. I'm just you want me to speak, I just give realities. But I am promoting training only because I've seen it. I mean, I just have seen it. Guess how you find out if you got attacked? Your employees tell you. Something's wrong in the system. Hey, this isn't right. Something's wrong here. Something happened. Okay? Now, if you actually refine that a little bit and train your employees in cyber defense and cybersecurity, they're going to be able to find things quicker, not months down the road. And then you're playing catch up, and then you're trying to recover. So training of your employees is the best bang for your buck. It just is. I mean, you just have to get them to understand that, look, you're here. Once you touch this, this is a tremendous responsibility. I mean, we don't even know how many machines we connect nowadays. I'm going to give you an example. I was working with a person that was running the control system of a power grid. So he hit a button, and I said, well, what did you just do? He goes, I have no idea. And that's a reality. He didn't even know what turbine he was turning on. So we have connected so many things that we don't really know what we've connected it. And that's a scary situation. And by the way, I'm going to talk about some things that I believe that human authentication and machine authentication and security need to be a little bit different. So what are the three things that I see that we need to do from the technology, from a cyber defense standpoint? I brought up insert, father of the internet, saying from the get-go, the internet was never made to connect all this stuff. It wasn't. We do it out of convenience. We do it out of, let's get some bang for our buck. But we have to change that. With that, we should be looking at changing the network. We have to have a different internet. We can talk about a lot of different things, VPNs, cloaking. There's a lot of other stuff that can be done. We have blockchain right now. We're really looking at the problem. Blockchain came to being because of the need, not because of anything else. It's just saying, hey, we've got to decentralize this. If not, we're not going to be able to communicate. And I'm not a big, blockchain is still maturing, and I'm in the middle of all that stuff, so I'm not promoting one or the other. But I am saying that people understand that there's a reality here, that we got to start working outside of this thing we call the internet. We got to start communicating other ways. Authentication and encryption. I'm involved in quantum computing, and I put post-quantum there, and I meant post-quantum computing. So quantum is kind of neat. It's horrifying too. I mean, it's amazing what's going to happen. So right now we make software that connects software, and that's how we make things run. We connect, and that's how things kind of take place. Quantum computing is a little different, where it's going to be able to touch something and say, okay, this is what it is. And by the way, it's very accurate. We're going to get intellectual property out of quantum that is just mind-blowing. Okay, it's going to be able to tell us stuff that we never knew. Here's the short-term problem. In the lab, quantum is working. Okay, it's got bugs, it's got issues, but we're going to reach the point that quantum computing is going to be able to just destroy encryption. Especially I'm trying to create on this thing, what I call static encryption. Encode, decode. Well, I don't care. It's a mathematical formula. I don't care how big it is. I don't care how complicated it is. If you're in a static environment and you're doing an encode, decode, that's going to be able to be broken. It really with supercomputers. We don't even have to get to quantum. And there's things that we can see that's a problem too. One of the other things that we really need to do, and I'll get to this AI thing, I don't like the way we're looking at machines right now. We're using analytics. Analytics is software. And now we're looking at the most sensitive part, potentially, of your system. And we're using software to do that. And we're using the algorithm. We call it analytics. So we're now touching, with software, some of the most sensitive parts of what you have. We're using AI in cybersecurity. So we're saying, okay, where is it now? We got to really watch this one. Okay, great. You have the ability through AI to watch it, but did you secure your AI to what you're watching? And the answer to that, shockingly, well, no, we're just gathering information. Yeah, I know, but what kind of information are you gathering? Guess what? A hacker doesn't really care to hack a database anymore. You know, it's kind of a pain. You got to, you know, okay, so what am I going to use that for? Why don't they just hack the AI and see what the guy's doing, or the company's doing, or the organization is doing? You know, why not just hack the intelligence? And that's what one of the problems is that we are doing today, that we're in using artificial intelligence. I'm involved in some other things. We use patterns, and patterns are a little bit different, so they're not software, and they're actually very quick. So you can say, oh, okay, this is what it's supposed to be doing. So we have ways of using that for auditing. And a pattern doesn't mean anything to a hacker. It's just like, well, what's that? Oh, you know, it's a pattern. Well, it does to the person that's using it. So there are ways around this. And I think this 1, 2, 3 is like, you know, this needed to be done yesterday, you know, not in the future. We really need to focus on these 3 points in cyber defense. Okay, we talked about the new internets. The use of private networks and internet is higher than the actual growth of the internet. I saw that statistic somewhere, and I wish I put it down there, but I read it, and I tend to believe it. This is how paranoid people are getting about the internet now. And these are big corporations. These are companies saying, hey, we really, you know, we're passing a lot of information back and forth, and we need to start doing something to secure ourselves. Talk about blockchain. Blockchain has an interesting future, I think, and there's a lot of work being done right now. I'm involved with what's called invisible internet. If you give your IP out, I can't tell you how many ways you can be hacked. It's pretty scary. So there was ways of cloaking this. You know, all this involves responsibility, by the way. If you're going to be, you know, cloaking things, if you're noise available to see what you're doing, there's responsibility to this too. But again, I'm in the machine world. I'm in the critical infrastructure world. It is my belief. Look, people, probably a funny way of putting this, but technicians can't stand people. Okay, we make this software, we build it, and the software works really good, and it doesn't make mistakes, and it repeats itself 1,000 times, and then we give it to a person to authenticate, and they screw it up. and it's kind of funny that way, but that's really what happens again and again and again. And remember, human error, that's the #1 reason for breach. So the authentication of people and machines needs to be different. The security of people and machines, only because people are a variable, again, I'm a technician, needs to be looked at differently than the security of the machine that's repeating the same action, doing the same thing, that really needs to be hardened and secure, and not allowing a variable or a person in there that can make that machine do something different. So we have to start looking at the security of people and machines differently. Big word, non-deterministic post-quantum encryption. Brilliant scientist I'm working with has a wonderful and a great idea, and it works. I mean, when I'm involved in POCs, by the way, I'm involved in them and I actually saw them work. They said, look, it's not a difficult problem. Encryption is static. You got an endpoint on both sides. You have an encode decode. Why don't we just make some variables on the other side so that your information is now in milliseconds changing and goes away? So in the post-quantum world, where it's going to be able to calculate what is being done in your standard encryption, you now have to be in a world saying, okay, yeah, but this is a millisecond, and I've changed it, and you can't. There's no computing power in the world that can do that. So there are some ways that we can fix this. Encryption needs to be fixed. You know, encryption keys drive me insane. I know banks, I know people that use them. Do you ever lose your keys? You know, I have. Okay, guess what? Imagine having thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of keys that you have to manage. Do you think you might misplace a few? It happens all the time. Okay, and honestly, the error reports come in and people ignore them because they go, well, that just must be something I forgot. And that's kind of where we live in. So we really need to get away from key encryption. Encryption algorithms, backdoors. I talked about that already. They're a problem. It's difficult. Multiple levels of human authentication versus machine authentication. We really have to authenticate differently. If you want to secure, it's not about really encryption. It's not about anything else. It's about really what's the first thing that happens. It's about authentication, even if that's in a business process, even if that's in a machine process. Yeah, this stuff is wild. This is a physicist that I've worked with, and he showed me a picture of his computer running. And all it was is a bunch of squiggly lines and colors and dots and things going back and forth. But what he did is he actually put into a pattern everything that happens in a computer. And he did it, by the way, as you can see there, at the binary level. So that means all the way to the IoT. We have a pattern. We knew what happened. We're saying, oh, okay, that's correct. Yeah, when I start my car, this is supposed to happen. And we're able to use a pattern to validate that. And then again, AI can hack AI, so we can't just be using software to validate software, because we're going to be able to get into it and we're going to hack it. And then the machine audits. Machines, you know, I say this to people very often. I said, well, you know, what's the difference between a computer and me? I said, a computer thinks in a millisecond, and I can't. So this stuff has to happen very, very quickly, and these audits have to happen very quickly. So if we can do that, then fine, we're ahead of the game. And that's what I'm trying to get to my point here. We just start, when you look at cyber defense, when you look at cybersecurity, when you look at hacking, it's technology. It's really not people, although, yeah, there's adversaries and people got different thinking on it. But the solution is technology. The short-term solution is people. Again, train. I'm telling you, you got to do it, and you got to do it as fast as you can, because you're going to be in a recovery mode. It's a lot better trying to catch it than it is trying to be in recovery. I showed you those numbers. That recovery time is expensive, and it's a long time. So right now, train. There's technologies coming. You know, that's my job, and I'm trying to get these technologies out as quickly as possible. And by the way, did a submittal to NIST, who in turn did a submittal to ISO. You know, this is a global issue. This isn't, you know, just one country. The security, the way I put it, you know, I don't care if I'm on a jet that's U.S. manufactured jet that's flying in the U.S., or I'm in Europe and it's a European manufacturer, or I'm in Russia, or I'm in China. I want to make sure that that engine, that sadly in many cases uses IoTs, is secure. This is a global issue. The security of critical infrastructure is a global issue, and it's a very concerning issue. So, you know, again, cyber defense needs to play catch up. Cyber offense might be the short term. You know, I hope. I really hope that we can, you know, that discussions can be made to say, look, you know, where's the gross national product win in this? You know, this is a lose-lose, and we really need to start looking at, you know, politically addressing some of this stuff prior to new technologies getting here. And there's wonderful technologies coming. I'm afraid of quantum in a way, but at the same time, quantum is just going to open our eyes to so many things, and we really need to be responsible. We're even talking about this in security. What kind of responsible security are you using? And responsibility is a big factor, and really the biggest human factor in all of this. And there's technologies coming. I work very hard with very smart people. It's my job to try to get proof of concept into reality. I think we need to invest a lot more in proof of concept because we are playing catch up. I don't think there's enough people out there to be able to fix things, which again is probably a very good situation for those of you who are taking classes and training. Trust me, you're needed right now. You're needed badly. I look at numbers and it's scary. I know in the U.S. like we need 1 million people. There's just not enough people to be able to take care of the problems that we have now. So we really need to help those people through a technology solution. And that's my part of the picture. That's what I'm trying to do. So driving the cyber defense standards really has to be done through a combination of proof of concept, and the reason being is kind of simple. Hackers have a real easy job with proof of concept. Their lab is the internet, and their total cost is a computer and some software that they have. I mean, I'm sorry, that's a disadvantage. So we have to start thinking along terms of defending without damage. We need to protect. We need to have ways of protecting our network, our business processes, and we have to start putting defense systems in. These are some of the training courses that, again, I suggest, being a proof of concept guy, I'm always ahead of everybody in all my thinking, and that's sometimes a difficult thing. When you're talking to the CEO is going to say, well, what can we do right now? And the best answer you're going to be able to have is we need to sit down with our employees, we need to tell them how serious this is, and we need to start training. And again, I'm not pitching the trainers here. I'm just dealing with the reality of what's going on. I need a little more time. I'm in a proof of concept mode, and I can fix this stuff. I mean, I can really, with some of the stuff I'm looking at, fix this, but I'm not going to be able to do it tomorrow. And you might get hacked today. So this is why you need to, you need to look at both sides of the fence. Let's look at training. Let's look at technology, but let's work together to get there. And with that, I'd like to open it up to Q&A.
Thank you, Larry, for this great presentation. I would like to inform you that PCB provides training and certification services for cybersecurity introduction, foundation, and lead cybersecurity manager. A PCB certificate on these courses will demonstrate your dedication in implementing and managing processes and frameworks in the cybersecurity industry that you work at, and most importantly, you will be recognized worldwide. Now we'll go ahead and take some time to answer some of the questions from the attendees regarding today's session. The first question is, what is the quickest and best way to detect a data breach?
Okay, and again, I understand I'm in the proof of concept world. One of the biggest difficulties that I have in data is that it's called data at rest. That's what a data breach is. So when you have data at rest just sitting there, you should never ever have allowed anything to touch it. Data at rest is just easy to hack. It's unfortunate. It's at rest. I can see it. It's sitting there. All you got to do is try this, try that, try that, try that, try that, and eventually I'm going to be able to see it. So being from the world that I'm in, I would say, create a honey hole. And again, excuse my thinking here. Recovery is difficult, okay? But it's just a reality you're going to have to cope with. And I try to stop it. I'm always thinking stop it first. So one of the best ways, if you have data at rest, and understand what I'm saying, it's sitting there ready to be hacked. you need to be setting up honey holes. You need to be setting up false ways of people trying to get in, and throw them into some database that frankly means nothing, just a bunch of gibberish. Banks are doing that today. So again, excuse my cyber defense thinking. Recovery depends on what was stolen, and there's so many variables in that question. But you have seen terrible, terrible data breaches, and I'm sorry, one of the best ways to recover is let people know. You got to let them know right away, because they got to change their passwords. They got to change stuff as quickly as possible. Probably not the right answer that I gave, but that's that's my thoughts on it.
Thank you, Larry. Now, because of the time limitation, we'll only answer one more question for today's session. So the last question is, with the high trend in the cyber attacks and hacking into networks and computers, can there be an alternative to internet?
Yes, and that's one of the things I talked about that people are truly looking at. I mean, people are just, the blockchain is being looked at a lot for a lot of different reasons, and we don't have to just get into Bitcoin and all that stuff. There's tremendous uses for it in the enterprise. So, I come from the network days, okay? I come from the days that, there were optic connections from point A to point B. Just because you have a private line, though, doesn't mean that it's secure. I understand it's actually easier to hack sometimes when you have a point-to-point that's saying, okay, I know exactly where you are. But that answer is yes, we have to. We have to start looking at getting off the internet in certain applications. The critical infrastructure in the business I'm in, that is a top, and has been for years, by the way, a top priority. We have to stop using it for certain things, and we have to start looking at alternatives which are available. There's virtual private networks. We're doing some things in cloaking. There's some private network aspects. There's some layer 2, layer 3 things that can be done that can actually run a different network for these critical infrastructure applications.
Thank you, Larry, once again for this great and informative session, and thank you everyone for attending today's webinar. I would like to let you know that this webinar will be recorded and posted on our website as well as on our YouTube channel together with the slides of the presentation. For more information about the PECB Insights Conference or upcoming webinars, you can visit our website www.pecb.com. Thank you all and have a great day.